Hey guys, Dusty here. Today I'm comparing two different daily trainers from Asics, the Asics Novablast up against the Nimbus Lite 2. Both of these shoes are neutral daily trainers from Asics, and both of them are best used on pavement. In this video I'll compare the uppers, the fit, the midsole, outsole, give my pros and cons of both, and finally which one I prefer. So on paper both of these shoes look pretty similar. At least in the men's versions, the Novablast has a 10mm heel to toe drop. The Nimbus Lite has an 8mm heel to toe drop. Both of these shoes have pretty similar stack heights as well. My men's size 8.5 in the Novablast weighed in at 9.4 ounces, and the Nimbus Lite 2 weighed in at 9.6 ounces. The Novablast retails for $130 US or $190 Canadian. And finally, the Nimbus Lite 2 retails for $150 US or $200 Canadian. Both of these shoes are pretty new to Asics lineup, which was kind of fallen behind other shoe brands in my opinion. Asics in the last couple of years has came out with some really fun, interesting shoes, and these are a couple of those shoes. And with that being said, let's dive into the uppers. So both of the uppers on these shoes breathe just fine. I haven't had any issues with either one. I haven't had any hot spots or any trouble areas. With that being said though, I actually have a couple of reviews on YouTube on the Novablast, and some people have commented that they've had issues with this upper, either tearing or getting a premature hole somewhere in it. And I personally have about 300K on this shoe, and I haven't had any issues yet. As far as the tongue goes on the Novablast, it's a pretty basic tongue. It's not gusseted or anything. It has about medium thickness, no issues there. The insole on both of the shoes are removable. I would say I'd give a slight advantage to the upper on the Novablast. The tongue on the Novablast is semi-gusseted and it's very, very thick. And because it's so thick, you can lace down. The lace is really tight, and I find you can get quite a bit better of a lockdown in the Nimbus Lite 2 over the Novablast. Now, as far as fit goes, both of these shoes are going to be good if you're someone who has a high volume foot. First of all, both of these shoes only come in standard widths. There's no wide widths available. However, with that being said, the Novablast especially is really good if you have a really high volume foot. There's just a ton of space in the shoe. I might say if you have a really narrow foot, neither of these shoes might not be a good option for you. For myself, I have a pretty average width foot. Both of these shoes fit me just fine for width. Because of the lockdown in the Nimbus Lite 2, I would say I prefer the fit just slightly in Nimbus Lite 2 over the Novablast. And I did go true to size on both of these models as well. Okay, now we'll talk about the midsoles of both of the shoes, starting with the Nimbus Lite 2. So the midsole on this shoe features Asics Flight Foam. Flight Foam is what's used in most of Asics' other high-end shoes. But with the Nimbus Lite 2, the density of this Flight Foam is quite a bit softer than what's found in the other shoes that use the same midsole. So because of that, you're getting quite a bit of a softer or more plush ride than some of the other daily trainers that Asics offers. So if you're someone who's ran in like the original Gel-Nimbus, this is going to be much softer of a ride than that. And overall, I have no issues with this. It's a really nice feeling midsole, gives a really nice ride. It's soft, not too soft. You still get a decent amount of energy return, at least for a daily trainer. So overall, thumbs up. Now the midsole on the Novablast. This is a very special midsole. This was the first time that Asics introduced their new Flight Foam Blast midsole, and this is a very, very bouncy and responsive midsole. Has a really decent amount of energy return. So it's soft and squishy. I would even argue more so than a shoe like the Hoka Clifton, but you're going to get a lot more energy return with the Novablast than a shoe like the Hoka Clifton, at least in my experience. So this is a really fun shoe to run in. I think it was many people's shoe of the year for 2020. I've recommended this shoe to many people. Everyone who's picked a pair up has loved it. And what makes this shoe so fun is definitely the midsole. So unlike any other shoe Asics has ever came out with, I would put the feeling of this midsole, kind of compare it to the Nike Zoom X foam, which of course is also a very special midsole. That's the foam that's found in the Nike carbon plated racing shoes. So awesome, fun, interesting, bouncy midsole. It's not without a few issues though, which we'll get into in a second. Now we'll move along to the outsole and the ride of both of these shoes. And first of all, you'll notice that the Nimbus Lite 2 has a much wider platform than the Novablast. So the platform of the Novablast is really quite narrow from the midfoot to the rear, and because of that, in combination with how soft and squishy this midsole foam is, it's going to make for a pretty unstable ride, especially when you're going around corners or if you're running on a road that has a camber to it. Your foot's going to be falling over this midsole foam. Or if you're someone who just needs a lot of support, if your feet pronate a lot, the shoe is going to offer very little support for you. But when it comes to running in a straight line, the Novablast, it's just a beautiful thing. Now, as far as the outsole on the shoe goes, the rubber is very durable. Like I said, I have 300K on the shoe, and I have basically extremely little wear on the outsole of the shoe. I'm definitely going to retire this shoe due to the midsole wearing out before the outsole will. Overall, I have no real issues with the outsole on this shoe. It's not the best on wet pavement. And then we look at the Nimbus Lite 2 outsole. First of all, a much wider platform, and that's going to offer a much more stable ride than the Novablast. So this isn't a stability shoe, but the actual ride of the shoe is going to be much more stable than the Novablast because this platform is so wide. There's just more surface area. This outsole performs fine on wet surfaces. I didn't have any issues with it slipping. I've even done some trail runs in the shoe without any real issues. And the outsole over 100K is holding up just fine. Alright, now I'll talk about how I use both of these shoes and which one I prefer. So we'll start with the Nimbus Lite 2. This is a really versatile shoe. It's definitely a true definition of daily trainer. You can do it all in this shoe. You can do easy runs, recovery runs, middle distance runs, long runs. You could take this on a tempo if you need it. For myself, for like tempo or speed work, I definitely usually take more of a racy type shoe over either of these. But that's not to say that you can't use either of these shoes for that sort of up-tempo work. So what type of running do I do in the Nimbus Lite 2? I have done a few easy runs in it, but I mostly save it for long runs. So the shoe's in my rotation kind of between that 10 and 25 kilometer run, kind of mid-distance to your like long Sunday run. Overall, I have no real complaints about the shoe. It's just a solid option, and I think for a lot of you that are running in like the Gel-Nimbus, this can be a nice little switch into something a little bit newer and more fun, more plush, more soft than what you're typically used to with an Asics shoe. Now, what sort of running do I do in the Novablast? This is definitely my go-to shoe for easy runs, recovery runs. I've taken it on a bunch of long runs as well, but definitely my favorite shoe probably of all time so far when it comes to easy runs and recovery runs. There's just something about that squish, that bounce from this shoe that makes running easy really enjoyable. And whether or not it has to do with the midsole, it keeps my legs as fresh as ever. So my biggest personal con when it comes to the Novablast is probably how unstable it is. So when I first got this shoe, I thought it was highly unstable. I thought I wasn't going to be a fan of it. But after a couple of runs, it kind of goes away. And especially if you choose a route that's mostly straight, mostly pavement, you probably won't have really any issues. But there are a few times even now that I'll run and I'll go on a route that has a cambered shoulder, and it's very uncomfortable in the Novablast because it's so narrow in the midfoot and the foam's so squishy, my foot just falls over the midsole. Otherwise, like I talked about, the shoe performs like a dream. I hope all of you can try a pair of these on, even if you don't end up getting them, just to see how bouncy this shoe feels. So ultimately, I think it's pretty obvious. I would choose the Novablast easily over the Nimbus Lite 2 when it comes to a daily trainer. I have nothing against the Nimbus Lite 2, I just prefer the Novablast, especially for easy runs and recovery runs. I also think the Nimbus Lite 2 is slightly overpriced. I think it would be a lot better at 130 US or 180 Canadian. So anyways, that's the running shoe battle over. Winner, definitely the Novablast. Let me know down below in the comments if you've ran in either of these shoes and what you think of them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.